My name is Krista Davidson, and my focus for my self-study was reading comprehension and how to foster growth in students' reading comprehension skills. While most of my experience so far in teaching has been with 5th and 6th grade, I've also had experience working with 2nd and 4th graders, both in the special education setting as well as the general education setting. And what I've noticed across these 4 grade levels that I've taught in is that reading comprehension is truly a key element of literacy that students start developing at a very young age in preschool and kindergarten, and that they continue to develop through high school and beyond into the rest of their adult lives. So this is one of the main reasons why I chose a focus on reading comprehension. Another reason why I chose this focus is because the expectations of reading comprehension begin to dramatically grow starting at the beginning of middle school. And because these expectations have increased so much, I decided that this was an area that I wanted to focus on and provide as much support as possible to my students. I am an AIS teacher, Academic Intervention Services, for 5th and 6th grade math and ELA. So to provide a definition of academic intervention services, these are services designed to help students achieve the learning standards in English language arts and mathematics in grades K through 12 and social studies and science in grades 4 through 12. These services include two components: additional instruction that supplements the general education curriculum and student support services needed to address barriers to improved academic performance. And the part that I want to highlight here is that these are supplemental services. Students are beginning their instruction in the whole group general education classroom, which is classified as Tier 1 instruction. And then for students who are academically struggling, they are pulled out to small group instruction, and that small group intervention instruction is defined as Tier 2 instruction. This is for students who are not making adequate progress in the Tier 1 environment. So they are provided additional services within Tier 2 small group, which is what I am teaching with my students in my self-study. My self-study topic of reading comprehension focuses on two of the main strands of the Common Core and Next Generation Learning Standards. The first strand that I want to focus on is the literary and informational text. These standards, summarized, focus on the literacy topics of inference, theme, central idea, comparing and contrasting, meaning of words and phrases, text structures, point of view, and details to support claims and main ideas. All of these topics are one that I am able to focus on while teaching reading comprehension strategies. I can teach students, and I did within my self-study, how to build in their reading comprehension knowledge while focusing on a compare and contrast article, for example. Another strand of the standards that my self-study relates to are the speaking and listening standards. The reason for this is because as a teacher, I am modeling collaboration of text, and I am also prompting students to engage in discussion of the text. And as they are doing this, they are verbally answering my questions. They are posing their own questions to either ask me or their other students. They are verbally summarizing the text, and they are also sequencing ideas by using appropriate facts, all while speaking at a clear and understandable pace. And last but not least, for my introduction, my AIS classroom is shared with the speech and language pathologist, so there is a barrier in our classroom to give us our own separate teaching spaces. When students come down to my room, there are desks facing a smartboard where they can gain their material and have access to that visual aid right there, as the instruction that I post is always on the smartboard as well as on their desks. My small group of 5th graders has 3 male students and 2 female students, and the setting within my classroom is located, the setting of my classroom is located within a very small school. The average graduating class is 15 students, and the small rural school is located in upstate New York. My research question for my self-study is, how can I foster my students' growth in reading comprehension? In order to conduct this self-study, there were various methods, instruments, and procedures that I needed to create and use. The instruments that I used are self-study observational forms, which I completed 3 times a week, double entry reflective journals, which I used 2 times a week, and data trends, which I used 1 time a week. I planned this self-study on a 4-week basis. However, due to immediate school closures, I was able to only complete 3 weeks of my research. So with that, in week 1, I administered the pretest, which was a 5th grade leveled reading comprehension passage of about 400 words. And my students were asked to answer 5 comprehension questions. 2 were text-based questions, 2 were inference-based questions, and 1 was a critical thinking response. That week, I also engaged in reading comprehension strategies, focusing on activating prior knowledge and predicting. And then at the end of the week, I administered an exit ticket. In week 2, I engaged in reading comprehension strategies that focus on questioning and vocabulary, and I administered an exit ticket on Friday. And lastly, in week 3, I focused on the strategies of how to make summaries and how to make inferences. And then the students were given their exit ticket on Friday. If I was able to proceed to week 4, my plan was to engage in the strategy called SQ3R. This strategy stands for survey, question, read, recite, review. And I was also planning to incorporate some connection building in there as well before giving the final post-test. Here are just some quick examples of what my instruments looked like. My self-study observational notes required me to answer 4 main questions. What did I do well today? What would I like to improve? What will I do differently next time? And any random reflections. My double entry reflective journal required me to focus on myself as the subject of my study and pick out 4 main observations that I noticed about myself as the instructor and reflect upon those. And then for the once a week grade trend, I observed my quantitative data to come up with 3 main grade trends that I noticed for each week. The summary of my findings showed that an effective way for me to foster growth in my students' reading comprehension skills was to engage in strategy instruction. Another way that I could best support my students in developing their comprehension skills is by modifying and adjusting the delivery of my instruction. Each week, my students displayed different areas of strengths and different areas of needs, as we all see as teachers. So one way to really support my students as well as their growth and comprehension was to adjust my instruction day to day and week to week as I saw necessary to support my students best. In these pie charts, you can see that I analyze the students' individual work as low achievement, mid achievement, and high achievement levels. I don't know if you can tell, but high achievement is represented by this light greenish aqua color. A high achievement was classified as 85 to 100% accuracy. Mid achievement is identified as this bluish teal color, 70 to 84% accuracy. And low achievement is represented by the dark blue color, which is 69% accuracy and below. You can see on the achievement levels on my pretest, the first pie chart to the left, that the majority of my students classified in the low achievement level. That was 3 students. You can see some growth as we move into week 1. So after 1 week of strategy instruction, where I only focused on 2 strategies, which were predicting and activating prior knowledge, students moved out of that low achievement level into the mid achievement level. So you can see that some growth has already began to develop. My last pie chart represents the last piece of quantitative data that I collected, which was achievement levels on the week 3 exit ticket in which you can see the majority of students had moved to the high achievement ranking. So this quantitative data is showing that focusing on 1 to 2 strategies at a time and engaging in core strategy instruction was really beginning to help my students develop their knowledge and reading comprehension skills. Here I have some images of one of my students' work samples. On the left, you can see the pre-test where the student received 30% accuracy. Those are the text-based inference and critical thinking questions I was referring to earlier. In the middle is the very first exit ticket that was completed where my student received 67% accuracy. So that is still classified as a low achievement level. However, you can see a gain from 30% to 67%. And lastly, in week 3, my student received 100% accuracy on her exit ticket, where she was required to make an inference and identify the evidence that supported her inference. Here's some more work samples from another student. I started with a student who actually began right in that upper achievement level. You can see that she received an 80% on her entry ticket, her pre-test. And at number 4, I wrote the word excellent because that was an inference-based question that she did a very excellent job on. So this showed me that her inferencing skills were pretty strong, and the area where she needed support was more of her critical thinking. Again, as she progresses into week 1 and week 3, you can see that her achievement levels fall in the high achievement range. So even for a student who started with a higher achievement level, you can see that focusing on strategy instruction did support those higher thinking and higher academic achievement skills students as well. The conclusion that I was able to draw from my research study is that an effective way to foster students' growth and reading comprehension skills is to provide students with ample amounts of exposure when using various reading comprehension strategies. This was the main takeaway I was able to collect from my research in my self-study. And what I find very important to stress is that students really need enough time to use each strategy. It is one thing to tell a student what inferencing means and give an example, and it is another thing to explain what it means, to show how it is used and why it is used, to engage in enough modeling first before transferring to independent skills where the students begin using those strategies independently. This is a system of instruction that found beneficial to fostering the growth in my students. One recommendation that I have for researchers who are focusing on this skill also is how to transfer guided skills to an independence level. And what I noticed is that during the guided portion of my lessons, my students really did a very nice job using the strategies. However, when they went to complete their exit tickets, I noticed some of my students still struggled, and I also noticed that some of them rushed. And this leaves me with the inference that they were not truly using the strategies independently like they were following my modeling. So this is one recommendation that I have for researchers in this area. Some recommendations that I have for teachers is to focus on activating prior knowledge, modeling, and providing visual aids and supports. These are codes that I noticed within my instruments that really stood out, what I did a lot of and what I found helped support my students. I also recommend modifying instruction as necessary to meet the needs of the children and to engage in strategy instruction as identified. And lastly, recommendations that I have for practitioners or for other people that would like to engage in a self-study on the same topic. If this is your very first self-study, work with a small group of students. There is a vast amount of qualitative and quantitative data that is collected within the self-study. In fact, there were 6 instruments per week plus the quantitative pie charts that I made. So if this is your first self-study, start with a small group of students so you provide yourself with the time and the opportunity to really analyze your data and focus on the specifics. And I would also recommend including digital print. I was unable to do this due to the school closures, but I am curious how digital literacy apps, videos, articles, etc. I am curious how that would affect students' reading comprehension skills, so that is one last recommendation that I have for practitioners as well.